Do you know that you're part of a grid? That when you hear people speaking about a matrix, they're speaking about you and everyone else that inhabits this earth. When we feel emotions and thoughts, or when we take actions, it all carries a vibration. And what we all have is an auric field. It's an energy field that goes around our vessel, our body. And what comprises that field is our thoughts and our emotion and the energy signatures that they hold. That means our beliefs, our subconscious, and everything in between. So if you could picture the globe, picture the earth, and now picture a grid going around the entire thing. At each intersection is a being, is one of us. And what creates that grid is our energy field. So this is why I say that anything in this world, any corruption, density, what we perceive as evil, it's all coming from us. From our thoughts and our emotions and all of our suppressed subconscious beliefs, our subconscious actions, our subconscious behaviors. So, the way an auric field flows is in a torus field, okay? So it emits from the center. We could say the heart. Some people think it's from all of the energy centers, but let's just use the heart for example, because no matter which center it comes from, it's coming from the center of our being. And it flows up, and it flows out, and it flows around, and then it comes back up our center. And so it goes like this. And that flow, depending on what you are feeling, thinking, omitting, perceiving, depending on the energy signature of those thoughts and emotions and perceptions, is what is creating, is what is being carried through this flow. So if I sit here and I am in constant judgment or hatred for other people, that is what's going through this field. If I sit here and I am in constant fear of leaders that are aiming to harm me and my family and my loved ones, that is what's going to run through that circuit. So, with that being said, now you take a mass of people and everybody is emitting this. And now they're all emitting fear. And they're all emitting judgment and shame on other people because they either don't believe in narratives, or they do believe in narratives, or they are part of this party or that party, or they do believe in evil and they don't believe in evil, or they do believe in God and they don't believe in God, or this goes for everything. I've been experiencing it recently within the appropriate diet community, where it's like, no, you should be eating meat, no, you shouldn't be eating meat. This goes for everything. This is polarity, right? Polarity is what keeps us into the subconscious state, and I'll explain that. So now that we've got it out of the way, that we are the grid, that everything we think, feel, and experience inside creates the energy signature of our entire globe. Okay, we've got that out of the way. So we are on, let's call it the third dimension. So here's the third dimension, and here's where we are. There's three aspects, there's three dimensions within this plane. Then there's the second dimension. There's only two dimensions of consciousness on this plane. If we are here with the ability to experience three dimensions, and there's two dimensions here, then when we behave and believe and omit emotions out of polarity, of right and wrong, of choosing one or the other, that is the subconscious. And we are pulling from the second dimension, pulling from the below. And I call it the below because I'm going to use an example in a moment. So, therefore, if this is two dimensions and it's the polarity and it's the subconscious, and this is the third dimension where we are, the three dimensions we have here are we pull the polarity of positive and negative from here, and then the third dimension here is that we have the ability to perceive both of these. So on the second dimension, there's no perception of the polarity, it's just one or the other. On the third dimension, we have the ability to perceive this. Now, many of us, we spend more time pulling from this density, because two dimensions are very dense, right? It's only two of them. We spend a lot of time with our consciousness here, which is subconscious. We're actually not conscious of it. So, what is above the third dimension? The fourth and the fifth, we'll say. And again, this is all, there's no linearity, but for the sake of our brains, we have to speak in this way, okay? So, let's the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension. So if we were to pull our subconscious up to the conscious, where we observe it all, we are pulling ourselves out of the density of two-dimensional polarity of subconscious, and now we are the perceivers. Now we are perceiving our subconscious, and subconscious is things like manipulation, lies, deceit, and this is something all of us do. It does not matter how woke you are. If you exist here, you do this. And when we pull the observation that we are doing that to here, now we're on the third. But what happens when we pull this up to here? Now you have two dimensions and three dimensions. And we become the fifth dimension. Now what about the fourth dimension? The fourth dimension is the layer. Now, this is a little bit hard to explain because of linearity. Our capacity to understand non-linearity, omnipresence, is limited. I don't even fully understand it, but let's try here. So, the fifth dimension always exists. It just does. However, it doesn't exist for many of us because we don't perceive it, right? It only exists to our reality what we perceive. But once we combine these, then it makes five. The second, the third. The fourth is serving as a veil. The veil that they speak of that is falling. Because when 3 meets 2, it's 5. And this veil that was here, the 4 dimensions, would be another even number, and it would create another box. And what we're not looking for a box. We're not looking for linearity. So this 4th dimension served as a veil to that, where we couldn't perceive the 5th dimension because it was getting stuck on this box. So what we are doing now, as a human species and as a planet, is we are upgrading that grid that we spoke of that goes around the earth. And each time we raise our subconscious to our conscious and we perceive it, we are omitting more harmony in our auric field, right? There's more trust in ourselves. There's more. There's more states of love. There's more understanding, because that subconscious stuff that we think we hate someone else, we think we're mad at someone else, we think we have disgust for someone else, the subconscious is rising and it's telling us, no, you have that for yourself. And when you realize you have that for yourself, when you realize that, it dissipates. It's just released. It flows through the vessel into that, and it just goes right up and through. And once you release that and you're not holding it into your vessel, it just goes. That's it. And the reason why we are responsible for each other in this way, we aren't responsible to change anyone. We are responsible to resonate in our highest capacity, in our truth, in ourself, because we are one unit, we are one organism. So when I disrespect somebody else, or if I tell somebody else they're an asshole, then I'm actually disrespecting myself as well, because I'm calling myself the same, because we're one unit in that way. We are one grid. So we could say, well, people are stupid because they don't see A, B, and C. Or people are ignorant because of this. Or people are self-righteous because they think they know everything. Or people have huge egos. Or people think they're so woke that they know everything. Like, we could say all these things. But what we're actually doing is we're just dimming our flow, our energy signature, and keeping our subconscious down here and not doing our part in the raising of our grid. So this is what they mean when they say no one's coming to save you. And that's not something to scare anybody. It is scary because we have the programs that we have been entrained with since birth and long before that, in all of our lifetimes, that carries through our DNA, is that we are reliant. We are completely reliant on everything else around us. But the truth is, that's emerging, is that we are creators, right? Because if we can take a subconscious and willfully move it and create another dimension, we are creators. But we've been programmed out of that. Who programmed us? I don't know. But I do know that we allowed it. And at this point in time, as the poles are shifting, it's supporting. Now, people have emerged their subconscious since the beginning of time, but due to these magnetic poles shifting, it is almost pulling. It's supporting. It's supporting that energy to be pulled up right now. And that's why there's a mass awakening. So, the question to ask ourselves, which is something that we would benefit greatly from asking ourselves in all situations, is, am I expanding the grid? Or am I shrinking it? Am I maintaining its density right now? Or am I elevating it? Am I doing my part? Or am I just condemning? Because when we condemn, we put ourselves in a place of in a realm of condemnation. When we believe we have no power, and that there's all these other powers that be that are calling all the shots, they're controlling A, B, C, and D, our money, or this or that. When we put ourselves in that realm, we create that because we're omitting that frequency through our field that makes up the grid. So I ask, do you remember who you are? Do you remember what you are? Do you remember how powerful you are? And if you do, continue upgrading our grid. Because this is the ascension. This is the ascension everyone's been talking about. It is willful. It is the willful steps forward. And this will be a part 2 of this. Probably have to elaborate on this more some other time, but when we willfully make choices that don't come easily, it's because when we repeatedly do things, there is an energetic signature that goes through our brain. And it actually ingrains a pathway. So if I was raised believing that, I'm trying not to think of a big topic, but here we go. If I was raised believing that God punishes, and I was always raised to believe that, then that belief has an energy signature and it keeps going in the same one, etching out that pathway, neural pathway. So therefore, the most comfortable thought for me to have now, in my 39 years of life, the most comfortable thought for me to have is that God is punishing, because it's easy, because there's a pathway that goes, and I don't have to even think about it. I don't have to be conscious. It just happens. So when we begin to come from that center place of gnosis, the observer, we're able to see our programs and look at them and say, excuse me, do I believe that God is punishing? And that's the observer. That's the third dimension. That's where we live right now. That's where we are. Is God punishing? And you become that in that observer spot. Then we sense discomfort because it didn't go on that track. It went right off that track, and it's much harder. There's much more resistance going down that thought neural pathway because it wasn't done before, right? When we start doing this with everything, and some will call this the dark night of the soul. Some will call this, the awakening. Some will call this, tower moments or Shiva or many things. But it's the destruction of the construct. And that's all it is. And it's very uncomfortable to the human ego. Because the human ego only wants to be safe. It just wants to know. It only wants experience. It doesn't want anything new. It just wants to know by experience what has happened all along. And if it's God is punishing, that's all it wants to know. And when let's look for another example, like, here's one. More simple, less grand than God is a punishing God. When we, our program as humans, when we are thirsty, right? The best thing to do is to start chugging water, right? Start drinking tons of water. Where did that program come from? Maybe our parents, mostly media, just movies, where they didn't even elaborate on it. You just see time and time again, someone's thirsty and they start chugging water. In reality, that is not hydration. And I won't go into this as an example. Hydration doesn't come from chugging water. When you chug water, you actually flush electrolytes and minerals out of your body. But through subliminal programs, and I'm not saying that anyone purposely did this, and I'm not saying that they didn't purposely do this, because we're staying out of that zone, right? But through programming of what we've experienced, within our dimensional plane is that you drink massive amounts of water when you're dehydrated. Hydration is actually supposed to come from fruit. Anyways, those are the little programs, and this goes for everything. So when we start bringing that up, when we start being the observer of these things that we're on autopilot for, take anything in your life that you do repetitiously and don't think about, and be the observer of it, and stand outside both polarities. Don't shun both polarities because they're here, they're part of this world, but observe them, perceive them, be the perceiver of them. This is how we raise the subconscious. And as it raises, it will be uncomfortable. But, however, the advantage we have is that if we are all doing it, now remember that grid, and if everybody's emotions are uncomfortable right now because subconsciouses are rising up because we're allowing them to, and if everybody's doing that, then picture a flower of life. And you know how the circles, they kind of overlap each other. That's our auric fields. So if we're all going through this uncomfortable state, yes, it's going to be a chaotic muck mess, which is exactly where we are, right? This confusing soup of information that's just swirling around us all the time. But if we are all observing that chaos, then we are supporting each other because that energy is connecting to everybody else, right? If we give ourselves that compassion and we say, you know what, this is like crazy right now, instead of saying it's crazy because of A, B, C, and D, instead, if we say, this is just crazy right now, it's overwhelming, and it's okay. If you have physical symptoms right now, that's okay. I'm going to do another video on this. That's okay. It's not because you did something bad, you took something bad, you got something bad injected, you ate something bad. Those things are sub topics. But if we're getting sick right now, it's because that is also within the subconscious and it is rising up and coming out of the body. I just got off a 62-day liquid fast, juice fast. And towards the end of it, there was so much purging out of me that I was losing sense of reality altogether. It was purging. I don't suggest it. I don't suggest not to do that. I'm just saying our bodies are changing rapidly. I am visually seeing changes in my face structure, in my eyes, in my body shape. My body functions, they're changing, they're different. And this isn't because we're sick and we're dying and we're being poisoned and we're being contaminated. Again, you can perceive those things because they're part of a reality, but that is not the whole reality. We are growing and evolving and shedding old stuff and blooming and blossoming, right? So, if we could connect to ourselves in that field, allow yourself to be the observer of those polarities, then you and I will be supporting every single other individual here. Because this torus shape, okay? This torus shape, because of the fourth layer, and I'll explain this again some other time, but for the sake of my point and this video not running into over 30 minutes, because of that layer, that veil that is now dissipating, the flow of energy became inverted. So, if you will, it kind of turned inside out. So we live in an inverted reality. And what I mean by that, to give an example, is that, human beings, we don't resist the dark. We don't want the dark, but we don't resist it. We actually cling to it. Human beings resist the light because we are afraid to see the dark. Human beings manifest what they don't want rather than what they do. Human beings perseverate, obsess, and constantly bring into their consciousness the things they don't want. rather than the things they do want. Not to say we don't have the ability to do that, because we do, but what is our go-to, right? Because we're in this inverted reality. But what's happening now is it's turning right side out, and it's uncomfortable, and it's okay, because we are all one organism experiencing this at the same time. Allow it. Allow it to flow freely through you, and all of your subconscious will flow through you. When it begins to hurt, let it flow through you. Don't catch it and grab it. Just let it flow up and out of you, because it's not just yours, it's all of ours. It's all of ours. Your shame, your guilt, your hatred, it's mine. And mine is yours, and so is everyone else. I just had a deep moment of gratitude right there for you. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for making me who I am. Thank you for being a part of this grid. Let's find our way back.